everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am so excited to be in my home office, not traveling. And I'm so excited to introduce you to these two ladies here Kayla, we've known each other for quite a bit. Gabby, I met last November at the FACT conference. But we're here to celebrate Celiac Disease Awareness Month. And Kayla, who is Celiac with Kayla, and founder of MyMeal and does social media and works at Fig, and Gabby, who's No Gluten Gabby, she helps host the Celiac Team Talk. They are leading voices in gluten-free world, and we're diving into what safe, inclusive dining really looks like with them. So I'm so excited to have you here. So ladies, I want to show a video really quickly I'm hoping this works, of the two of you when Gabby, this is especially when I met you. Let's see if I can do this. Present, share screen, window. There we go. Share. There we go. Point of view. You spot two celiacs at a restaurant eating dessert. And I shared this video out on my social media after you posted it because it is 100% accurate for how celiacs get dessert at conferences. So let's talk about that. I mean, is that literally when you eat out, is that how you have to eat? Dessert especially?
Usually we pick the right places that have the gluten-free desserts.
not all the time. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
In a bad situation, but
right. Yeah.
Like conferences and things that are kind of out of our control, like the amount of weddings that I've gone to that I can never get the cake with a wedding cake or any of the desserts on the table. It's usually fruit, or if they always have like the little white chocolates or chocolates on the plate, I'm like, okay, I think I can have that one as long as I read the label.
Well, and those little white chocolates don't necessarily have a label on them that you could read. No.
So I usually eat a meal beforehand, or if I'm lucky enough to know the bride and groom well enough to figure out if I can have a safe meal, then it works. But other than that,
all right, Missy,
a little treat in your bag.
Right, exactly. Well, I do that all the time. All right, Missy popped in. I love that video. So it's so true. Thanks for joining us, Missy. So I want to tell everybody about your celiac experiences. So Gabby, you were diagnosed 5 years ago when you were graduating from college. So I want to hear a little bit about that. And then Kayla, you're almost 19, you're 20 years or almost 20 years, 19 years having been diagnosed with celiac. So I think you come at it from similar perspectives, from very different perspectives. So Kayla, start with you first, and then Gabby, I want you to chime in because you also were diagnosed graduating from college during COVID. So that's a completely different kind of experience. So Kayla, can you talk about your experience?
Yeah. So I got diagnosed when I was a kid at 8 years old. And at the time, if you were gluten-free at that time, you know that there was not a whole ton of options. So I thankfully had the support of my parents, and we were doing crazy things like making our own bread in a bread maker. We had our own fryer in our garage that we kept. My dad would take gluten-free flours like almond flour, all these individual ones, and make his own one-to-one flours. So my parents just got really good at being creative with gluten-free, and even going out to restaurants, nobody knew what celiac or gluten-free was at the time. It was not a commonly known term. So it was much more of working with the restaurant to figure out something that's actually safe rather than saying, hey, I have celiac, which is what I would do now. So it was definitely a different time, but I think having that experience really taught me so much about how to advocate for myself, because at that time you couldn't just say I had celiac and people understood. You really had to walk people through what that is and understand it yourself really well too.
Yes. So yeah, that's totally different. And I realized just before we went online, you found out you were celiac about the same time that I found out that I was allergic to yeast. And so I went on a gluten-free diet, and that was 2003. Yeah, that's about the same time. And there was gluten-free girl in the chef and not a lot of options to figuring it out.
Yeah.
But so Gabby, 5 years ago, that's 2020. You're in the middle of COVID and you're diagnosed with this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
How that came about?
I would say, my hobby over COVID, I feel like everybody had a hobby. Mine was trying to figure out my disease and diet. So my first year, and I like to blame COVID on a lot of this too, is obviously you're at home most of the time. I was pretty isolated. But before my diagnosis, I should say I was a very extroverted person. I was in sports, jobs, school, everything. And I was constantly going because I never worry about food. I could go through a drive-through, I could grab a sandwich, do whatever. Then I got diagnosed and I became very isolated where I was always cooking at home. I don't think I ate out, even when things were opening back up. I didn't eat out for almost a year and a half just because I just was so fearful of what would be out there because anything that I saw online was like, oh, it's not safe unless it's a dedicated place. Just there wasn't much information at the time where I was like, oh my gosh, like what can I do? Like, am I just going to be at home forever? And my sister has celiac, so I would ask her questions. And she's kind of the one that introduced me. I went to go visit her while I'm in Virginia, and she's like, no, you can eat here, you can eat here. Started opening up a little bit more, but being in Michigan, there wasn't any dedicated places at the time I was diagnosed yet. There wasn't many places besides one other like dedicated bakery. So I was like, oh, I could go there. But other than that, if my friends were going out for dinner, I would say, oh no, I'm okay, which not like me at all. So I definitely noticed how much like my social battery was always at zero just because I was so fearful of going out. And obviously 5 years later, now I'm found the balance of everything, finding the place, like safe places to eat, making the friends like Kayla. She just has taught me so much about how to like navigate a menu. If you're not seeing it's actually gluten-free, if there's not a gluten-free label on it, like knowing you just have to ask the right questions to see if it's actually going to be safe for you. Kind of just learning those tactics. So over the last couple of years, I've grown a lot more, and I feel very lucky too that I got diagnosed around this time frame just because gluten-free is becoming more popular in good ways, and still some people think it's a fad, so there's still some discrepancy there. But overall, I felt like going into the stores like during COVID, I was like, oh, I could find gluten-free bread. I could easily find the items I needed. So that's the plus versus probably getting diagnosed in 2023 and having to make your own flours and everything. But it was still very interesting knowing going 22 years, having no celiac disease, no allergies, nothing to worry about, to now having to worry about it every single day. I think that felt like a personality change almost when I got diagnosed. And I didn't really notice it until years later, of course, where I was like, oh, I'm totally different now.
Yeah, no, it really is eye-opening and understanding and trying to figure out how to navigate that. And Kayla, you did a video this morning before you got here. And I like that message because can you just reiterate what you said this morning? Because it really ties into what Gabby just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gabby's experience is like one of many people that get diagnosed with celiac later in life. I think I have a little bit of a different perspective because I didn't learn about my celiac through like online forums or the internet at all because my parents did all the research and then taught me. So I had a very like sheltered existence of learning about my celiac, and my parents were never like fear-mongery or like they didn't scare me into anything. I think like now online, there's so much fear mongering. It's a little crazy. Like there are Facebook groups with like just straight up misinformation. And so there's a lot of people that get diagnosed with celiac and they're terrified to literally like go out of the house, do anything because they think like one gluten exposure is going to like kill them and take them out for the rest of their life and permanently damage them. But the research does say that if you make one mistake, if you do have damage after having cross contact, your body like can recover from it. Obviously, if you have repeated exposure over time, you will cause long-term damage. But if you make that like one mistake or you go to a restaurant and something happens, yeah, it's going to suck. You're probably going to get sick. We obviously want to avoid that at all costs, but your villi is not going to be like permanently damaged for the rest of your life. Our bodies are like super amazing. They're very like our plasticity is really great. And so like one mistake that you have like every 2 years is not going to like take you out for the rest of your life. And I think that's just like important information to keep in mind because people can be really, really hard on themselves and feel a lot of shame and guilt, and mistakes happen. We live in a world where there's a lot of gluten, and thankfully this is not an anaphylactic food allergy, which is a much scarier thing. Your throat can close. Celiac's a little bit different. It's an autoimmune condition and you will recover from it if it's once in a while and it's a little mistake.
No, I think
that is what helped me a lot over the years. Because I feel like the anxiety that you get when you think you're going to be like damaged forever from one little mistake, you're like, oh, it just feels 100 times worse. But now when it happens on the one-off chance, I'm like, the first thing I do is like, okay, be calm about it. Just go through the like recovery process you have to. But I feel just so much better knowing that it's not as scary as some people have made it seem to be.
Yeah, it's
Right.
really hard on parents too, because like I have a lot of parents that message me. They're like, I'm so freaked out because like, what if my son or daughter goes to college and then they don't ask the right question and then they get sick? And I'm like, okay, like they're going to figure it out eventually. Like they're not going to want to be sick every day either. And so you have to trust them that like they're going to keep their health in mind. And if a mistake happens again, like they'll be able to recover from it.
That is such an important message because and then I think food service people need to hear that too. Not that we want them to make the mistakes of serving something that's gluten-free, but I think at the same time, being able to address the questions that you have. And I'm going to bring up another video I saw of you, Kayla, and it was you, and I've seen Gabby, and I think you've done something like this, but I know that a couple other people have too, is that you called crumble cookies because of a new gluten-free cake they put out, right? And I think Sarah and Spices, who's going to be on in a couple of weeks, did that and you do it when you're eating out and asking the questions. Can you talk about that too, really quickly, about what the questions that you should be asking, not only a manufacturer, but maybe a restaurant chef or a restaurant server? The two of you can address those together, but talk about the crumble cake first.
Yeah, so I mean, I call a lot of restaurants. That's like a big focus of my page, is showing people how to ask questions when ordering out and feel comfortable and confident doing that.
And Gabby said she learned from you on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Me and Gabby went out to eat together and Gabby was like, oh, this question.
We were sitting, it was actually right before the FAFT summit last year. We got lunch and she was just asking all these questions. My face dropped because like, wow, I just feel like I just learned like everything right then and there. Like everything clicked.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like a standard, like these are the questions that you should ask because it's like highly dependent on what you're ordering. I think with crumble, like the information that you need to know is like, is it prepped in a separate area? Like, how do they ensure that the equipment is clean? All of that kind of stuff. The answers that I got from Crumble are they hand wash all their dishes. That particular location that I called didn't have a dishwasher. It is kept and made there in a separate area. But of course, like there's a lot of flour in the air. I've worked in restaurants, flour lands on everything. Like I've worked in a dedicated restaurant that used almond flour, and almond flour was on pans, pots, like all of these things. Granted, like I've eaten at non-dedicated pizza restaurants and been fine. So theoretically, like I think there is a world in which you could eat the crumble cookie and probably be fine, like the new gluten-free one. The dishwasher was a little bit of a concern for me just because I don't know that I trust 18-year-olds to like actually really hand wash something really well. So that's why I ended up not trying it, because I trust a dishwasher a little bit more to like fully sanitize and get the gluten off of something. But yeah, I think it's just like a risk assessment, like ask questions on how things are prepped. Like the way I like to explain it is like, think about how you would cook that meal at home and then what questions you would need to know in your own home to know if it's safe. Right. Mm-hmm. And those are the questions that you should ask the restaurant, right? Like they're cooking a burger. What would you use to cook it at home? You would probably use a grill or a flat top. And so then you ask, okay, what do you put on the grill and the flat top? Do you put buns on there? Like kind of just like think through that process internally about what is the process that they're using to cook it, and then ask them those questions and make sure that it's safe. If you just say, I have celiac, I'm gluten-free, now you're relying on that chef to understand and think through all those pieces of cross contact, which I'm sorry, but they're just, like most of the time they're just like not going to do that, which is like totally fine. And some really, really good, highly trained chefs will, but it's at the end of the day, your responsibility to think through those things and work with the chef to make sure that they're also thinking through those things. You can't expect them to just like do that on your behalf.
And Gabby, I want you to pipe in here too. But I also Monday I took my recertified my food handler certificate, food safety manager certification, and the topic of food allergies came up, and because that's part of the training, and he did mention, he's like, if you're throwing flour in the air because you're a bakery or whatever, don't expect really to be able to say that you're a gluten-free environment, right? Because of exactly what Kayla just said. So but I also, at the same time, you said you've eaten in pizza joints. So Gabby, from from your perspective, what are the questions that you typically ask and want to know answers about? And then what was one that you learned from Kayla that really just kind of blew your mind? Like, oh, I should ask that question.
Yeah, because when I usually go out to restaurants and before getting lunch with Kayla last year, my first thing I would always ask is I'm also a very shy person when it comes to ordering food. I don't ever want to seem like I'm like telling them what to do, or I don't know. It's just how my mind.
You don't want to be a burden. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
They need to be told what to do sometimes.
Kayla always yells at me to be more confident in that stuff, so I'm learning. But my first thing I always ask, I'm like, oh, do you have shared? Well, I say I have celiac disease or gluten allergy, and then I ask about shared fryers, or if I'm going out, let's say for pasta or Italian food, I'll ask if they use the same water to boil their pasta. I always start with something like, oh, do you guys share that? Because in my mind, I'm like, if they know, then it's definitely going to know, like, I have an severe allergy, can't handle cross-contamination. And those were always the questions that I would ask, especially with pizza, like, oh, if you guys are putting it in the same oven, there's actually not gluten-free, totally gluten-free, but there's a pizza place here, and they have a wood fire pizza, but then they have their own pizza just for gluten-free and cauliflower crust pizzas. So there's no shared oven or anything. But when I asked that, you have to tell them about the allergy when you go there. So that was one thing that I asked too. I'm like, oh, do you guys do separate ovens? Or if you put in the same oven, do you use like a platter or something? And those were always like the questions I thought of when I went for burgers or things. I did not even ask about the grill top until I went out with Kayla. She asked, how is your chicken seared? Is it on a flat top that's shared with buns, or is it on like its own pan that you can clean and wash with soap and water? How is that cleaned? Like going more thorough with it. And that's when it put in perspective, like, oh, I have to even look out for the flat tops, because they're probably not washing that with soap and water and then doing everything if they're putting bread on it or whatever they're cooking. So that was something that I always thought about too, or now that I think about when I'm going and ordering anything, is like, how are you guys prepping it? Do you guys have a separate area, or what the case may be, especially with bakeries? Because there's a couple bakeries around here too that have gluten-free options, and they actually have like a whole separate area, but I didn't know that at first. And so sometimes when I didn't say I had an allergy, this is years ago, when I first started going here, they would just do it all on the same plate. And then once I said allergy, they're like, oh, make sure you're always saying that, because we have a separate section. We do it all differently. We label it. It's so important to tell them you have an allergy, or that you have this intolerance, that you can't handle cross-contamination. Because without that, it's basically saying, like, if you're just asking questions, you're like, oh, I just have to be gluten-free. They're like, okay. But if you say allergy, I feel like it just triggers every server's mind. Like, okay, this is serious.
Yeah.
Do you get annoyed when they're like, or go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, with the flour in the air, some restaurants like do throw with rice flour. So they'll like intentionally do things to like prevent cross contact. So it's like if they might still have like the gluten pizza, but then they throw with rice flour so that the stuff landing on equipment is less. So there are like lots of hidden things that restaurants do that most people have no idea about because they don't ask. But if you just like ask, they'll tell you. So
okay. That's really cool. What do you get annoyed by when somebody says, okay, you guys preface it with I'm celiac, but when they say, well, is this celiac, or is it an allergy, or is it a preference? Does that bother you? Or if that's a question that you want food service to ask you?
I don't mind if they ask that question. Just in my perspective, I'm like, I get it. You don't want to do a full clean out job, change everything. If it's just somebody who's just like, I just don't want the bread, or I'm just avoiding it for their own health reasons, and they don't care too much about the cross contamination. Because I understand that that's a lot to do, especially if it's like lunch rush or whatever it may be. So I always feel good when they ask that question. I'm like, okay, at least you know the difference too. Kind of puts that in perspective. But
okay, so what is a dining experience that both of you have had, positive or negative, that really kind of stands out to you? And it could be one, you can have both or just one. I mean, I guess the best ones are the good ones. But, what's a bad one too that you were like, okay, no, I'm walking away from this place? And you don't have to name names. Yeah, don't name names if you don't. Yeah. Go ahead.
I had one. It was just the new taco place in Grand Rapids. And I was like, oh no, did I just say the name? But a new taco place in Grand Rapids. And I went there the first time, and the server that I had, I asked, are the chips fried separately? She said, yeah, those are gluten-free. I had these plantain things. I was like, are those fried in the fryer? Do you just like pan fry them? She's like, oh, we pan fry them. And they're all safe. Everything's safe. And I was like, oh, great. This is awesome. They're so good with celiac, everything. 3 weeks later, I took my dad there. Different experience completely. I asked if they were in the shared fryers, and they said, yeah, that nothing's gluten-free here. We can do a corn tortilla for you. I was like, oh, I was just here a couple weeks ago. Like, did you guys just change this? They're like, no, it's always been like this. And so my heart dropped because I was like, was I sick last week because of that? Or was it something? Like, just running through all the questions. And then when I ordered my 2 corn tortilla tacos, my dad ordered his food. His food came out. They came back to me. They're like, oh, we messed up. We just have to fix it. I was like, okay, no problem. They go back in, they come back out, and they're like, we messed up again. We accidentally put cheese on it. I was like, oh, I said it was gluten-free, not dairy-free. I was like, as long as the pan's clean. I was like trying to explain to her. She's like, okay, 1 second. Comes back out. 10 minutes. It was like 45 minutes later. Finally, she comes back and she's like, yeah, we can't serve you. And I was just like,
oh my God.
That was,
wow.
And we just went across the street to my regular place that I always go to. But I was like, first of all, I was like, who told me that this was all safe 3 weeks ago? And now that it's not, I'm like freaking out on all different levels. And I just didn't know what to do because I was like, so who's training you guys? And I called a week later to just talk to a manager and get all the answers. And the second girl was right. They do share fryer. They do all these things, but I don't understand why it took so many times. And then the cheese. And when she said the cheese thing, I was like, I just don't even think I should eat here, but it's fine. But it was just like a very interesting, that was like the only time I've ever had a scenario that was very like, I can't believe that just happened.
Right. Yeah. Allison just piped in here. Oh my God. No gluten, Gabby. Or I love no gluten, Gabby. Thank you for tuning in, Allison. All right, Kayla, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of questionable restaurant experiences. I think for me, like the worst experiences I have is when a server or a manager just like straight up don't want to communicate or think they're like absolutely right about something that I know that they are totally incorrect about. So I think it's that more like unwillingness to work with me that normally turns me off from a restaurant, because I have been to restaurants that only have one option or like very limited options and have still had good experiences because they're willing to like work with me to something. But the experiences where I go, hey, I have celiac, and then I start asking questions, and then they go, you're good. We're going to keep you safe. I'm like, girl, I don't know what that means.
Right.
I need more information from you. Like, you just want me to like trust you? That's not going to happen. So I just like, those are the experiences that are almost more nerve-wracking to me than like somebody who only has one option, just because when they have like a straight up like unwillingness to give me information or like communicate with me or work with me, I'm like, something's going to get messed up. Something's going to fall through the cracks. Like, if you're not willing to communicate with your customer, why should I trust that you're going to now communicate it to the chef? Like, absolutely not. Will not happen. So those have been like my questionable experiences, is like more so a lack of communication.
Okay, so then let's flip. I totally appreciate that, because it is like I remember going to an event and we were given the cards that say, hey, I'm Tracy and I don't eat gluten and all this, and then gave it to the server, and day one the server's like, oh my God, great, this is so awesome. And she went back and she brought out the plates, and it had a plate cover on it and she put my card right on top of it so she knew to do it. And then the next day, Gabby, this is kind of like you, the guy's like, what do I do with that? I don't know. So it's like that. And granted, in a big humongous convention center, that's part-time servers that are coming in. They're not necessarily a restaurant server that's worked there a little bit longer or maybe had some more additional training than serving a 1,500 or 15,000 person convention. So, but still, it's the same. You're like, really? What am I doing here? All right. So tell me about a standout experience that you had. What made it stand out?
I think one, or it's not even one, it's like, it's happened a lot when I go to restaurants. And the one thing that always stands out to me the most is when they're like, oh, they just start telling you their protocol. When they just start spieling it off, I'm like, I trust you with my life. Like, everything you say, like when they say, oh, we have a separate area, or like, oh, don't worry, like we clean this, we change our gloves. They just start talking and say all that. Or if it comes out with an allergy tag too, or if like even a server, one thing that I always appreciate too is when they don't know, but they'll tell me that they'll go ask, or they'll grab a manager or the chef and bring them to me. Because that always makes me feel so much better than them saying like, oh yeah, you're good. Because you're like, no, like, hey, listen, I'm not going to trust you at all. But when they're like, I'm not sure, but let me go grab my manager. She knows more about this than I do, whatever that is. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to be taken care of here. So that always makes me feel like overall just great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kayla, what about you?
I'm going to ditto that. I mean, honestly, kind of just all the things that Gabby said, like when somebody communicates a lot, just like answers all your questions without you even asking them, that always makes you feel really good and comfortable.
Okay, well, that's good. And it is nice when they can answer the questions legitimately and authentically, right? And whether that's the server or the manager. Okay, so if somebody was recently diagnosed, and Gabby, I'm going to say that you're kind of recently diagnosed in those 5 years, but what would you tell somebody? I mean, Kayla, based on that video that you did today, and I'll post the link to that too, but what would you tell somebody who either has to travel for work or is just going out to a restaurant? What are your key things? You've kind of mentioned some of those, but what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Especially for when you're traveling, especially like for restaurants, I would say I do rely heavily when I'm traveling on apps or like Googling things and seeing like what's already been reviewed and seen by people. That's usually the first thing I go off of, is I trust the community a lot, or I'll try to see like wherever I'm going to, prepping ahead of time with these restaurants, where you're staying, everything. Preparation is key to figuring out where you can go and that's safe. And then also advocating for yourself and just having the confidence. It's very hard in the beginning. Trust me, I'm someone who didn't even go out to eat the first year and a half because I was so nervous. But as you continue to do it, you can even like write it down on a card. I feel like that actually helped. I did that a lot, especially when I was traveling. So like, I don't know what else to say, or if I just give them a card, they can give it back to the chef or anything. Just having something that says, I have celiac disease, and there's cards online too that explain this perfectly and tell you what you can avoid. Having that, if you're not fully confident in how to explain it yet, having a card with that on there with the questions you had, or like what Kayla said earlier, is like thinking about every place you go to, think about how you would cook that meal and ask those exact questions on the grill top, the boiling water, the shared fryers, whatever it may be. It's never bad to ask a million questions, because it's better than a million questions than a night in the bathroom crying.
Yeah. Kayla?
Yeah, I mean, I am a little bit like some of the things for sure, but I'm a little opposite in that like I think too much planning can be really stressful and give new celiacs, especially like more anxiety than necessary. The trips that I've planned the most have been where I had the most breakdowns. The trips that I've planned less have been more seamless. And I think the biggest thing is just like learning how to be confident, how to advocate for yourself, how to ask those questions, because that will help you no matter where you are in the world. I've traveled to 36 countries. I've cooked my own meal in Thailand because they like didn't feel comfortable and safe. So I went into the back of the kitchen and cooked it with them. Like when there's a will, when there's a will, there is a way, let me tell you. So that is like my biggest thing, is like learn how to advocate for yourself and like start to build that confidence in who you are. I know it's hard, especially if you're an introvert. I am like a little bit introverted sometimes, but not in celiac situations. And I think a lot of like that energy has come out of me having to learn how to manage my celiac disease. But yeah, I think like using your resources for sure, looking at reviews, that kind of stuff is helpful. Calling in advance is helpful. I just wouldn't like over plan to the point where like if something goes wrong or your plans go astray, like it's going to ruin your entire day. Because I think that's also can be very counterproductive, right? If you have an app of 20 restaurants and 5 of them are closed, like you might have a breakdown, which is like not for you. So there is like, yes, plan, but like don't be so attached to your plan that it's like if something goes wrong, you're going to freak out.
Right.
Rely on your,
because you got to roll with the punches. You got to roll with the flow.
Yeah. Like everybody's like, oh, I lost my spontaneity. Like there needs to be flexibility and there needs to be spontaneity with your celiac, or else like you are not going to have a good time.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard.
All right. So Missy piped in here and asked the question, do you generally, going back to like our conversation before this, do you generally trust servers or do you ask for managers right away?
That's a good question.
How do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the situation and the restaurant. I think when I'm in large groups, I always ask for the manager right away, just because I know as a previous server that it's really stressful when you're trying to serve 10 to 15 people. So more so out of the respect for the server as well. I'm like, hey, she has to deal with 15 people or he has to deal with 15 people. I'm going to go to the manager so that it's not like they're dealing with 15 people plus my allergy, because that's going to be more stressful, and that's how mistakes happen. So in certain situations, I will absolutely go to the manager. But if it's just like me and my fiance eating out, it's a server that is knowledgeable, seems to understand the questions, then I'm fine, comfortable just talking to the server. But if I do talk to the server, they don't know how to answer my questions, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth, I'll just be like, hey, if you don't know the answers, that's totally okay. Do you have a manager that might know the answers? Because it will probably just be like easier for both of us if I communicate with them. So it's really like you have to take it in context. But
no, that's awesome. What about you, Gabby?
Yeah, I was going to say I agree. A lot of it too, especially as time goes on with your diagnosis and as you eat out, I feel like a lot of it's my intuition too when I'm talking. Like she said, if they're just like kind of seeming like they don't know what they're talking about, just like politely saying like, hey, can you grab someone else, like the manager or the chef or somebody? I had that happen at a restaurant before where they had gluten-free batter, and I asked the server, I was like, oh, is it fried in its own special fryer? They're like, no, we fry it with everything. And I was like, okay. I was like, so it's not with the fry? Asking, and the question just kept going around in the same circle. So I was like, do you mind if I talk to the chef, like to ask how the fryers are? And then once he came out, he was like, we have 3 fryers. One's regular, one's for fries, and one's for gluten-free batter. So I was like, okay, I'm glad I asked and did that extra one. Now I was able to actually get what I wanted instead of just thinking like, oh, okay, that was not safe because he just didn't know and just said no. Yeah. And he's like, I don't know. So yeah, you kind of just like feel the conversation and how it's going. And a lot of times I'm like, all right, I either trust it or I don't. Once they're explaining it and feeling confident in it too, that's when I'm like, okay, I trust them.
Yeah, unlike the hotel I was in, and I said, do you have dedicated fryers? And they're like, well, yes, we do, but it gets used for other things when we get super busy. I'm like, okay, that would not be a dedicated fryer.
Yeah. Also,
and 2 different servers said it at the same restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, asking questions in multiple different ways is sometimes helpful. So normally, like when I'm asking about a fryer, I'll go, is it a dedicated gluten-free fryer? And they're like, yes. And I follow up with, okay, so are like fries the only thing that go in that fryer? And then I've had people be like, no. And I'm like, what goes in the fryer then? And they're like, onion rings. And I'm like, that's not a dedicated fryer then. So like sometimes asking questions in multiple different ways is helpful, because they might be like not knowing what you're asking and then just say yes because they want to please you. And then if you ask it in a different way, then you might actually get the proper answer. So that's happened to me like several times.
Well, and they probably also don't know. I mean, and I've been telling this story a lot lately too, is that I've had chefs tell me, well, I cook, so I don't have to label. And then the front of the house staff, and this is mostly at hotels, is the servers and the banquet captains are like, well, I don't cook. How would I know that? And so the same kind of situation with the restaurant server, I'm like, they're not in the kitchen the whole time, all the time. But they should know how the cooking's done. But at the same, so I like the fact that you suggest asking it in a different way, because maybe you're also educating them at the same time. And actually that just happened to me at a restaurant recently, and the fries came out, and they, you know how when they have that batter on them and you know right away when you're looking at them, and she's like, no, our fries are gluten-free. And they come out and I'm like, do those have batter on them? And she's like, oh, I've got to go check. And they come frozen that way with that stuff on it. And the manager and the general manager came out and said, okay, we're comping your meal. And we're giving, because they were also going to charge me $22 to have broccoli instead of fries. And there, I got my broccoli, well, for free altogether. All right. So Kayla, I think you've talked to Nancy before, or she's been on a couple of things that we've done before, but she said, congratulations on your 36 country travel success. Keep it going. With that in mind, are there countries, cities overseas where you've been more successful with personal dining without having to cook with the chef in the back?
Yeah, Thailand was hard. I would not go to Thailand if you just got diagnosed with celiac. I was in like the suburbs. But yeah, Italy is known to be really great for celiac disease. I've probably seen that all over the internet, but they have a pretty good celiac disease association there called AIC. And the AIC program actually looks at restaurant and kind of evaluates them. There are obviously some limitations to that system. There's a creator of celiac in Italy that lives in Italy and kind of talks about these limitations. But I would say generally, people are pretty educated there about celiac disease. So I have been there 2 or 3 times and I've always had good success. I would say most places in Europe are normally pretty good as well. Europe definitely has stricter laws for certain things. Like they have to have documentation for, I think, the top 14 allergens or something like that.
They do. And theirs is gluten is considered one of their top 14.
Yeah. So they're even like labeling on packages at grocery store there, like they don't have like a contained statement like this. They like bold allergens, which actually makes it easier to read. So even if it's in a different language, I find it still easier to identify whether something has gluten. I also had a really wonderful experience in Iceland. I went there recently, like at the end of last year. And yeah, they were just super great. Like all the restaurants there were super understanding. They're very thorough. They speak extremely good English. So I had like no issues in Iceland. I thought that was a really good experience. And then I also lived in Norway for like 6 months. And I also had a really good experience in Norway, kind of similar vibe to Iceland. So yeah, there's a lot of like really amazing places. I would say the only place where I really, really struggled was Southeast Asia. There were definitely some places that I went to that I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But that's also because I was traveling like in not well-known places. If you go to big cities like Bangkok and Chiang Mai, like you'll be fine. There's enough like westernized hotels where you'll be able to find food. But I was like deep into like you're only getting food at food stands. And so it was just a different layer of complexity.
Yeah. Right. Hey, Mia, our friend Mia was over on Instagram there. She said, Kayla and Gabby slay. Yay. She and Sarah are going to be on the show on the 21st. So for everybody who's listening, Mia has allergies to 50 different foods. And Sarah, I don't know how many she has, but I know she's got food allergies and a couple of other medical conditions that require her to eat specific ways. But so in celebration of Food Allergy Awareness Month, they're going to be on in September, the 21st. No, the 21st of this month. Okay. So Gabby, you work with I forgot the name of this association, but you are host of where did it go? I just had it. I had a note written for myself. Oh, here it is. The Celiac Teen Talk.
That's put on by the Celiac Foundation. Yeah.
Celiac Foundation. Okay, great. What do you get what are those teenagers asking you? And how do you help them navigate this?
Yeah. So we've been doing the Teen Talk for now a year. And I want to say the main thing that we're always talking about is how to advocate for yourself, how to correctly communicate this to your friends and family. I was just thinking about last year, our first Teen Talk. It was really good, but it was also very eye-opening because, I wasn't diagnosed in school, so I didn't know. I wasn't different. I could eat normally like everybody else. And so a lot of kids, though, deal with bullying in school, whether it's, I had one say that they had bread thrown at them, or if they're eating lunch, they'll just like throw their bread on their plate, things like that. And where it's just so, it's horrible to hear these things. And we obviously tell them that's straight up bullying. You have to report that. You need to talk to somebody higher up. That's not okay. They're literally poisoning you. But a lot of it's not so much like the bullying itself, because that's like a whole extreme, but it's just a lot of people not understanding either within their friend group or even their family, like going to Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those big party events. I feel like that's the biggest thing that they're always trying to navigate, whether it's going out to restaurants before dances. And like I said, all these holiday parties where they're like, oh, my uncle always says like, oh, that's not real. You can have another bite. And he's like, how do I nicely say this and not try to start like a whole argument? But I just want them to know, like, no, I can't eat that. Or I don't want to say no to my grandma's baked goods, but I'm so scared that she used like regular flour or just doesn't have a clean kitchen or whatever that may be. It's such a pivotal years, 13 to 17, that you're just trying to learn your own life and going through puberty and everything and all of that. But then now you're like, oh, I'm also different from people because I have to look out for these foods. And I don't know how some people don't know how serious it is yet, where they're like, oh, I can't have like shared fryers. Or if like my mom had like a sandwich and then handed me my own sandwich with crumbs on her hands, like I have to look out for those things. So it's very interesting. Each Teen Talk's a little bit different, but overall it's always about advocating for yourself and how to confidently say that to people. And there's always different ways you can say it. But like I just said, I'm actually have my next teen talk is next weekend. And one that I'm bringing up is the raw chicken theory. It's just like, I feel like you're just finding fun ways, not fun, but, interesting ways to get people to understand, like, okay, how can I put this into their perspective for them to understand? Like, what do they have to avoid in life? Maybe I have to avoid it too, like raw chicken or rat poison or something where you're like, how do I say this to them that's going to help them understand? And that's like the biggest thing that we try to talk about is just like, how do we just bring it up like it's a conversation rather than feeling like the spotlight's on you? Because that's another thing too, is like kids don't want to have the full spotlight on them saying like, oh, well, I have to eat differently, I have to do this differently. And then some people don't believe them. It's like they just want to come at it naturally, saying like, these are the things that I have to avoid. Here's how you can help. And of course, like how to navigate or how to tell them like when you're sick and when you do get gluten, like how do I confidently say that without feeling like, oh, I'm sick again or I'm this again. It's like just building that confidence within them.
Right. And I just shared the link, and it's a really long link to your TikTok video of that, because I thought that was really well done. And I think I tagged it on Instagram too. That's a really long link. Hopefully it comes through, but obnoxious link. I tagged one of the food safety manager at NC State, and he was doing a study for a chicken company years ago, and just watching when like, because people rinse off their chicken, and he was telling me about how the germs on chicken spread when you're putting it in the sink, and it's really, you shouldn't be rinsing your chicken. But I tagged him and another woman who has a podcast called Don't Eat Poop, and food safety podcast. But your video was really well done. And I love how you explained it, because it really but it is that way. So thank you for doing that. And hopefully people go and watch that. And you can also watch it to her on her Instagram handle as well. And while we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and put all these up here, but there's Kayla's on Instagram and on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then where's my one for Gabby? And there is Gabby's on Instagram and TikTok as well. No Gluten Gabby and Celiac with Kayla. So I so appreciate the way that you communicate some of these things. And Kayla, you and I have joked about this. I'm like, you eat so much food on your Instagram page that I just, but I love how you do it. It's just not what that I would do, but I love the fact of how you are to me, both of you are very approachable in how you present this and the importance of it. So thank you for doing that. And me, as somebody who could be your mother, old enough to be your mother, it's a different way to look at it. And the fact that you're both advocating for self-confidence and is super important right now. So thank you both for that. I'm going to cry. I shouldn't do that. But so there's I've seen it. And so there's a label that I see a lot: avoiding gluten on labeling and gluten friendly. What is your take on both of those terms on a buffet?
On a buffet?
Oh, like a restaurant.
Or a catering buffet, or where at a restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm personally not as bothered by some people by it. I know a lot of people don't like that term.
Which one? The gluten friendly? I
mean, kind of both of them. Like, they both have the same sentiment. I think working in the restaurant industry myself, I understand why people use it. It's for legal reasons, because they want to guarantee cross contact when they're not a dedicated kitchen. So I think because I understand it, I'm less bothered by it, as long as they are still willing to have that conversation and explain to me what to do. I think when they use that as a cop-out and then don't communicate with me at all, that is when I am bothered by it, because I'm like, okay, you can label it gluten-friendly, but I don't know what that means. Like, that can mean a lot of things. And so I need a follow-up of like, okay, does that mean you're cleaning your kitchen? Does that mean you don't clean your kitchen at all? Like,
right.
There's so much ambiguity in that term that unless you let me know what it means, then it's kind of frustrating. But again, like, I understand why it's there. So if it's there for legal reasons and then you still follow up with everything that you do, that's fine. I don't really care.
Okay. All right, cool. Okay. So now Kayla, you've seen this because you've been diagnosed for almost 20 years now, and Gabby 5. What do you hope to build or change in the celiac gluten-free space in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would love it for it to be a top allergen. Just make everything easy. That's the long-term goal. I don't know. There's one thing, and I think Fig's doing a great job, and there's a lot of apps. I just like having more communication and just more people joining in and sharing their story, sharing where they eat, like the reviews on the restaurant apps and things like that. Just like trying to find an easier place, like a central location for it all. I feel like you're still going through so many avenues just to figure out what's safe sometimes, or like what's new and things. I'm like, I would love if I could just figure it out just right away, like how easy it is for anybody else, like who don't have allergies or anything. And I just wish it was that easy for us sometimes, but it's getting there, I feel like.
Kayla?
There's a lot of things that I'd love to have. I think, yes, it would be such a big win if gluten-free was a top 9 allergen, or just a top allergen in general, because it would make labeling a lot more clear. I also think that awareness is just like generally really helpful, because I mean, like things like what Gabby was saying with her raw chicken video, like if every restaurant understood and like took that seriously, I think way less mistakes would happen. So I think just like awareness of how cross contact actually works. And then I also think like the diagnosis process still has such a long way to go. Like most people aren't getting diagnosed because they have to do a gluten challenge, which is really terrifying. I know they're working on studies in Australia to be able to like extract the data and like do it in a petri dish instead. So that would be a really big win. That could come out to make diagnosis just like more accurate in general and more accessible for people. And then I think like post-diagnosis care also has a lot of work where it's like everybody should be seeing a celiac dietitian, not a dietitian that has no idea what celiac disease is and is going to fearmonger you into doing things that are absolutely unnecessary. Like we need to have we need to have more educated dietitians about celiac disease. And it should be a requirement that you are like getting, or maybe not a requirement, but like it should be accessible where like you can have a dietitian covered by insurance. And that's like part of your diagnosis process, just because there's so much miseducation coming out of it. And people are turning to Facebook forums and resources online that are not accurate. And that's like how there is all of this fear and misinformation in our community.
And I think that's really, really helpful because you get diagnosed, and Andrea Doyle is on Instagram, and Zoe from Invisibly Allergic is on Instagram as well. So hello, ladies. Because you get diagnosed and you walk out the door, right? And they assume that you know what to do. And they're like, avoid gluten, right? And I love the story that I've heard Alice Beth tell from Beyond Celiac, is that she spoke to a group of gastroenterologists at a convention, and then she was in line at the airport ordering her food and having the conversation, asking a variety of questions, and the person at the airport doesn't know the answers, and this gastroenterologist was behind her watching this, and she said, "Oh my God, I had no idea this is what you go through once I diagnose you and you walk out the door." And so I think the doctors also need to be so much more aware of that implication of that diagnosis, right? It's more than just saying, "Oh, go avoid gluten," you know? Yeah. Or, "Oh, by the way, you're allergic to peanuts," or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's a lot harder to navigate this world than we think. Yeah. Okay.
A lot of dietitians that like people go to dietitians, and their dietitian will not know like anything about celiac. Like I've heard so many horror stories. Like if you're a dietitian, like we should introduce that into the education. Like that should be a part of becoming a dietitian. Like we need to know about autoimmune conditions, and we need to know about the implications of them. Right now, like, there are few and far between that are like specifically celiac dietitians that know a lot about it. Like I get asked for recommendations all the time. I can count on like my hand how many that I trust to send people to, which is like that is not.
No, that's not good. No. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say when I was first diagnosed, I was referred to a dietitian just through my doctor.
Mhm.
And it was just like an online Zoom call. She's like, I emailed you over a sheet. Like, this will explain everything with celiac. You just have to avoid wheat, barley, rye. I was like, okay. It was like 15-minute call, so fast. I got the sheet emailed to me. It was one page. It wasn't even front and back, one page. And it just said exactly what she said. She's like, you can have vegetables, milk, cheeses. You can't have wheat, barley, rye, soy sauce, like some of the main things. And I just remember freaking out. So there's more than that. Because I went to the grocery store. It's like, that was one of the first things I did when I got diagnosed is I just walked through the grocery store and read labels. And I was like, I don't know what half these words even mean. I was like, would that be gluten? Would it not be? Then you're just like constantly on Google. I remember like finding a couple celiac dietitians online. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn more from them online than I will like from this girl. And so it was very like disheartening because especially looking 5 years later, I'm like, she knew nothing. And I just like felt like so lost for so long when you could have just start right from the beginning with somebody really walking you through the process and having multiple meetings and like checking in on you and seeing. I feel like it would be a whirlwind of a difference.
Yeah. All right. We have somebody on Instagram, the Z Solid Light said, I've definitely experienced this throughout the medical community where doctors and allergists don't even know about the realities of food labeling laws and the precautionary labeling is optional. 100%. Yeah. And I know that we're fighting the industry, the community of food allergies and celiac are fighting for that precautionary labeling, right? Oh, may be processed in a facility that also does this. And so we're across, I think, globally working on what that actually means, right? So it's definitely different. And we've got, that's Zoe. So she said it's Zoe from Visibly Allergic. I'm just on my work computer. Hello, friends.
Yeah, I agree though. Yeah, precautionary labeling is so ambiguous. It's like, it's hard to tell what it is. And I just think I'm not a dietitian. I am technically a certified nutrition coach, but like, why do I know more about like celiac disease and how labeling laws work and like how to speak to a chef than like most dietitians? Like, that's not right. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like people should not be coming to me as a creator on the internet for those questions. Like, yes, I'm happy to answer them, but like, I'm not qualified to give medical advice. But it's hard when the people who are qualified to give medical advice like aren't giving you that advice. So.
Yeah. And I want to, so true. Because when I got diagnosed, my allergy was to yeast. And I went downstairs to the dietitian and she's like, here's the food pyramid, go home and eat. And I'm like, oh, that's quite helpful. Thank you so much. And granted, this was 2003, but still, I'm like, you're a dietitian. You should be able to help me. Where's yeast? What foods can I not eat, etc. Margaret from Gluten-Free joined. Margaret from Gluten-Free Gal from Michigan. Your home state, Gabby, is on Instagram as well. And C. Mary Fitz is just joined. Thank you so much. And Sarah and Spices is on here. So she's going to be on here with Mia at the end of the month. So I'm excited about that. All right. So I want to do a quick round. Oh, Nancy just asked a question. Again, for Kayla, just out of curiosity, where is your wedding and who's catering? Oh, I meant to ask you that question. Please know that this is not a tongue-in-cheek question. She's got a good story on this, Nancy. You're going to like this. She stood up for herself.
Yeah, so my wedding is next year during the summer, and I'm having it at Vail Ski Resort. You will find that when you look for venues for events, that most people try and require you to use their own catering. So what we did was we four-walled our venue, basically like paid a premium in order to allow us to bring in an outside caterer. So we're having drinks go through them, and we are going to have them like order Holiday special because they don't normally cater that. And then for my caterer, I have a good friend here named Logan Mason. I have known him for many, many years. He was the executive chef at Parker Garage and Foraged. And I trust him because I have known him for so long. He was one of my first like MyMeal customers and worked with me a lot. I've like gone through his whole menu. Like I've educated him myself about a lot of things. So yeah, he's just a really great guy. And he has a catering company called Bad Dog Eats. But yeah, he's really awesome. So he is going to be catering the wedding and just like basically bringing his own equipment. But there is also a chef in Fort Collins that I met the other day that's really wonderful, works at a dedicated gluten-free restaurant. His name is Dan. He works at the restaurant called Locust Ciders, and he also does 100% gluten-free catering, and he is super knowledgeable about celiac. So if I wasn't going with Logan, I would probably go with him as well if you need another option. But yeah, there's a lot of wonderful catering companies. But the menu thing, I definitely sent a very strongly worded email and was like, hey, this is not an option. We will go with somewhere else if you don't let us four-wall. And they were like, okay. And then they let us do it. So
yeah. So in a sense, like a corkage fee, and they do it. And I think you and I, when we had this conversation when I was in Denver, is somebody said, well, we allow kosher or Indian caterers to come in. And then they're like, well, if you can do that, then why can't you let me do this?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like, we're not sure if we could do allergies, but we have done it for like kosher. And I was like, okay, well then you're going to do it for allergies. Like, I don't know why we're even having this conversation anymore.
Right. Exactly. All right. I'm so proud of you because it's a hard thing to fight, and it is no outside food and beverages allowed. And so typically, thank you for doing that for yourself and to show that it can be done. Okay. we're at 59 minutes. So I want to do a rapid fire, just 5 quick questions, just 1-word answers or whatever. Your go-to gluten-free snack.
Razi bites.
Razi bites?
Okay. Yeah, it's like a Brazilian cheese bread. It's made with tapioca starch and cheese, and it just pulls up. That was like one of the first things I tried when going gluten-free. I was like, this diet's not going to be bad.
Kayla?
Larissa's Kitchen. I'm a beef stick girl through and through. I eat them incessantly, so.
Okay. Most celiac-friendly city you've visited?
Denver.
Just Be Kitchen. You got to delete it. Just Be Kitchen. Hi, Jen, wherever you are. Oh, and Zoe just wrote, yum, I love Brazil bites. Or Brazzy bites. Sorry, Brazzy bites.
They're so good.
Yeah. One restaurant you wish was 100% gluten-free.
Oh, that's tough. Man. I just wish there was I wish there was 100% gluten-free fast food chain that you could just like a McDonald's, like everywhere. You could just go through a drive-through. That would be my favorite.
Okay. All right. Pet peeve when eating out.
When people ask for a bite. I always hate that. I'm like, I can't take a bite of yours, so you can't take a bite of mine.
For me, I was thinking it was what I talked about earlier when a server like just refuses to talk to me.
Talk to you. Okay. All right. And then last word. Describe celiac disease in 1 word.
Aware.
Enlightening.
Okay. Ladies, I love you guys. Thank you. I appreciate you very much for being here. You enlightened the world. Nancy just piped in. Somebody's going to jump on that gluten-free fast food. You'll see it on Shark Tank down the road.
Somebody is. I don't remember. Yeah. There's Power Soul in Las Vegas that I know is trying. And then there is one more that I've seen, I think like in the UK somewhere. But hopefully they expand.
All right. And Gabby, Margaret, just from Gluten-Free Gal, Michigan Gluten-Free Gal, I should say. She just said, I wish we had BB Bop Asian.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Grill in Michigan. They're 100% gluten-free.
That would solve all the problems.
All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I'm going to put back up here your Instagram. These are your Instagram and TikTok handles, right?
Yeah.
And you can also find them on LinkedIn as well, because I'm connected with them. So if you can go find my account. Oh, and Margaret just piped in too, that saying that Asian Box in California is 100% gluten-free.
Love Asian Box.
So,
yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, you're welcome so much. We talked for 1 hour and 2 minutes. I love it. So this is going to be quite helpful for a lot of people, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. And don't go anywhere because we need to take a picture. And
I do have everybody. I have them.
Okay, we're going to take a picture right now. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and smile. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Next week is Food Allergy Awareness Month. So I have 3 different episodes coming to you next week. Tuesday, I'm talking to a planner who has food allergies, a nut allergy. And on Wednesday, I'm talking to 2 planners who are moms of kids with food allergies and just the challenges that they're having with planning their own events, and same thing with on Tuesday as well. And then on Wednesday, I have a psychologist Amanda Whitehouse coming to talk about the psychology that and the stress that goes with having food allergies and celiac disease, et cetera. And then, as I said earlier, Mia Silverman and Sarah from Sarah and Spices will be on here on the 21st of May to talk about their multiple food allergies and how they handle that. So thank you for tuning in. We had a great audience today. I appreciate you. And until then, stay safe.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.